A few minutes ago, we talked to our reporter, Corin Hoggard, my colleague, who is out, looking into some of the businesses that have elected to be closed today, maybe through tomorrow, maybe longer, out of just basically fear that their employees might face some unwanted attention for various reasons. Many of them say that they are documented, but don't want to have to deal with immigration agents questioning them while they're working, etc. There's all sorts of reasons. But we wanted to take a closer look then at the impact of immigration enforcement on businesses, on consumers, at Minnesota's economy at large. What is the immediate impact? What could be the lasting impacts? How might you see this? Joining us now is the Associate Dean of the University of Minnesota's Humphrey School, Ryan Allen. Ryan, thank you for joining us today. I know this has been something you've been talking a lot about recently here. The research that you have about local effects here on immigration enforcement, what are the data points that you look at? Let's just kind of put some context here. How you look at this, what information you gather to try to measure that effect.
Well, thanks again for the opportunity to be with you. It's an important topic. I'm glad you're covering it. The kinds of information you would want to know to understand what local impacts you could expect immigration enforcement to have on the economy are things like hours worked, wages that people are receiving, closures, either short-term or long-term for businesses, as well as lots of other more nuanced kinds of data, like delays, for example. I'm thinking now about the construction sector, which we know many immigrants work in. What kind of delays might we anticipate for roofing projects or other more general construction projects?
Yeah.
Those are all kinds of data that would be helpful to understand in order to judge what effect this is really having.
Well, in the background too here, I know you've done a lot of research in previous years, about the impact of immigrants on the economy, years ago, prior to this sort of enforcement action. And what were the results of some of those studies and surveys that you did about the impact historically?
So what we know in the case of Minnesota is that there's a long and for many people very proud tradition of immigration to the state, going all the way back to the 1800s, where we had one of the largest proportionate immigrant populations of any state in the United States. And I'm sure that many of us trace ancestry back to that time, Nordic or German immigrants, for example. Well, fast forward to today, and similarly, there's a really important role that immigrants are playing in our state. They are an important contributor in our state's economy. They are disproportionately present in our workforce because of the sweet spot of where many immigrants are on the age range. Many of them are working. Actually, a larger proportion of immigrants are engaging in work than the proportion of non-immigrants in the state. They create new jobs through creating new businesses. Immigrants are an amazing engine of entrepreneurship and starting new businesses. And so my previous research has documented all of this. The last thing I would mention is that our state, like many states around the United States, is aging. Having younger workers come in to fill jobs that need to be filled, like in healthcare, for example. These are all roles that immigrants have been playing for decades in the state of Minnesota, and certainly that remains true today.
All right, so the immediate impacts that we may be seeing now from this enforcement surge here are either people leaving the workforce because they've been deported, for various reasons, and or they are choosing to stay home, and businesses are not opening because they're fearful for being approached and having to go through the process. They may be legally here, but still worry about having to prove that, or maybe their immigration status, their immigration hearings will be challenged in some way. Which is the bigger impact you think that we're seeing currently?
Well, to some extent, it's hard to disentangle those two things, but I think what we know is that the Department of Homeland Security has reported a particular number of arrests they've made. Those are people who clearly may be going on for deportation, at the very least have been detained for some period of time. They're not showing up to work. They're not out circulating in the economy and spending money, and that's going to be one hit. I suspect the bigger hit is the larger group of people who have anxiety about what this will mean for their individual circumstances, what this will mean for loved ones, and are changing their behavior as a result. Maybe withdrawing from some aspects of public life. That could be working less. It could be changing the way they're working. It could be shopping less. And I suspect that that's going to have the bigger impact. How long this will last and with what intensity people are experiencing the immigration enforcement that's going on in the Twin Cities right now are going to be important determining factors for how big of an effect we should anticipate on our economy.
How much?
Is it going to be a week? Is there going to be more? It's hard to say at this point.
Yeah. How much, though, would you tell people that, this trickle can become bigger? I mean, what is the true measure of the impact that others may see? I mean, if you're saying it's, percentage-wise, it might be a small number of people that aren't working, or a percentage-wise, a smaller number of shops or stores that choose to remain closed. How much does that then impact a greater economy?
Well, because of the integrated nature of the economy, it's a long answer. I'll try to be as brief as possible. The integrated nature of the economy means that this is going to have ripple effects, right? So think about suppliers who rely on other businesses for inputs. To the extent that those are disrupted, that can have a ripple effect. I think we should also think about not just the larger scale, but this is not randomly occurring in space, right? We know there are some neighborhoods that are more affected than others, and therefore more local business owners that are probably affected than others. And so the greater intensity in a particular neighborhood is going to mean a larger local economic impact for that community. But to get back to your original question, I would fall back on understanding how intense this immigration. Many officers circulating in a very visible way, and how long this lasts. So a business can withstand a closure for several days. Can they withstand it for a week? Can they withstand it for longer? At some point, there's a tipping point, and we could potentially see businesses no longer able to sustain themselves and having to shutter on a more permanent basis. If you don't have staff that comes and you're not able to rehire before bills come due, et cetera, that can have a cascading effect.
And as we go through this then, lastly here, as you continue to study this, which you have for years, what are you going to be watching for in the coming weeks or month or two as this goes on? What data points are you specifically going to be watching?
Well, I think that there are some that in the nature of this research is going to be having to look backwards, because we're going to get data that comes, but it's going to be delayed. Business closures would be the major thing to watch for, but also people falling behind in rent. So to what extent are businesses having trouble making rent payments to property owners if they rent their space? And then I think within the metro area of the Twin Cities in particular, we may start to see some subtle shifts on the margins of employment status from particular groups. That would be the third data point that I would be looking for.
Okay. Thank you for taking some time with us today. We'll certainly want to check back with you as we continue through this to see what your insights are. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, the Associate Dean of the Humphrey School, Ryan Allen, at the University of Minnesota.